All right, welcome back to ABA Exam Review and the continuation of our RBT Practice Exam series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shoutout. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. You are asked to track how many times a client independently initiates a greeting, like saying hello or waving, during a 30-minute play session. Over 3 consecutive 30-minute sessions, you record the following counts. Session 1, 6 greetings. Session 2, 9 greetings. Session 3, 7 greetings. To describe the client's performance across these sessions, you would most likely calculate the what? Now, this is a measurement question, but it's a little more challenging because you've got to think along the lines of, if you were the analyst, what measurement would you choose to record the performance of the client? Well, let's figure out what we're tracking. We're trying to figure out how many times a client independently initiates a greeting. And so our target behavior is going to dictate our measurement. So if we want to know how many times, what is that telling you? Well, it's telling you we need some sort of count, right? And then when we look at our data, we have a count, 6, 9, and 7. So if we have these counts, it's got to be related to frequency somehow. It can't be duration because we're not looking at the length of the greeting. It can't be latency. We're not looking at the time in between the SD and the first greeting. And it can't be interresponse time. We're not looking at time in between greetings. We're looking at the number or how many. We also have this time component. So how can we take frequency and time and combine those? Well, we can record rate. Rate is just frequency over time. So you have a 30-minute play session. You could calculate how many greetings per session you found. To describe the client's performance, you would use rate. Remember, the target behavior dictates the measurement we choose to use. A pedestrian approaches a crosswalk. When the walk sign illuminates, they cross the street and safely reach the other side. When the don't walk signal is on, they wait. The walk signal primarily functions as a what? All right, so when we talk about the function of a piece of our contingency, which is ABC, antecedent, behavior, consequence, we need to remember what each piece stands for, right? So let's just quickly review. If we're talking about reinforcement and punishment, we're talking about the consequences of the behavior. Now, what you always want to do is first identify the behavior, right? The behavior in this is crossing the street. Okay, so we're looking at crossing the street as the behavior. Now, our antecedent is the walk signal illuminating. Consequence is safely reaching the other side. We're looking at the walk. So are we looking at reinforcement or punishment? No, because we're not looking at the consequence. We're looking at the antecedent. So let's start there. So now we can think about our discriminative stimulus and our motivating operations. What's the difference between the MO and the SD? The MO changes the value of a consequence, while an SD signals the consequence is available. When that walk signal lights up, does the value of reaching the other side safely change? No, you always want to reach the other side safely. The walk signal doesn't change the value of reaching the other side safely. It doesn't make you want to do that more. What it does do is signal safe crossing is available. So when that walk signal illuminates, that is the SD or discriminative stimulus signaling you can now safely reach the other side. Reinforcement is available for crossing the street. So remember, you want to first identify your behavior, then you can look at your antecedents and consequences. And from there, it's really just eliminating the wrong answers, whether that be an antecedent or the consequence. You observe a client's caregiver engaging in physical interaction with the client that appears to be harmful and is not consistent with the client's current behavior plan or your agency's policies. Your immediate and most ethical obligation as a behavior technician is to do what? So we have an ethical question, right? And as technicians or BCBAs or people in the ABA field, our number one priority is do no harm, right? We want to keep our client safe. Now, we've also got to consider that you're the technician and this is the caregiver. So ultimately, what they say goes. If the caregiver or the stakeholder wanted to just end services, they could. So if you're in a situation where you're looking at this physical interaction that you believe to be harmful and is not consistent with the behavior plan, as the technician, what are you ethically going to do? A, immediately intervene and tell the caregiver to stop, explaining that their actions are unethical. Something important to remember is we, as ABA practitioners, follow our ethical code. If you are not certified under the BACB, the ethical code does not apply to you. So you cannot sit there as the RBT and explain to the caregiver how they're being unethical. That might just be how they're parenting. You may not agree with it, you may think it's wrong, but it's not your place to tell them what to do. B, document the incident thoroughly in your session notes and discuss it with the caregiver at the end of session. Well, if you actually think it is harmful, then you should not wait. You have to report that immediately to your supervisor. C, ensure the child's safety and report it to your supervisor immediately. Yes, make sure the child's safe, make sure nothing worse happens, right? If you believe it to be harmful, make sure it doesn't escalate, and you've got to report that immediately. Do not wait. D, observe for a longer period to gather more evidence before taking any action. If you truly believe something is harmful or the client could be harmed, you have to report that immediately. Now, telling the caregiver what to do in a parenting situation is not your place. But as long as the client is safe, you have to just report this immediately to your supervisor. So the answer here is C. You're asked to take data on how much time elapsed between a client's instances of headbanging behavior. For example, if the client bangs their head at 11 a.m. and then again at 11:20 a.m., you record a specific number of minutes. What type of continuous measurement are you collecting for this behavior? Pretty straightforward continuous measurement question. What are we measuring? We're measuring time between clients' instances of headbanging behavior. Now that makes it very straightforward. One, we're looking at time, okay? So we know it's going to be duration into response time or latency because it's continuous. It's not going to be frequency because, as we discussed earlier, frequencies account how many. Here we're looking at time. So that's a quick way to eliminate some answers. Is it time or is it a number? Then we're looking at time between. So when we're measuring time between, we're looking at interresponse time or latency. Duration measures time of a specific response. When we measure time between, we're looking at interresponse time or latency. Quick way to remember that. So if we're looking at time between a client's headbanging behavior, which is time between responses, is that latency or interresponse time? Well, latency is the time in between the SD and the response. Interresponse time is the time in between responses. So if we're looking at time between responses, we're going to look at interresponse time. Pretty straightforward measurement question. A child is playing with a preferred toy. When the child throws the toy across the room, a caregiver immediately takes a toy away for 1 minute. As a result, the child throws toys less frequently in the future. Taking the toy away for 1 minute, continued on throwing, is an example of what? All right, so let's think about this, right? We know that we're taking the toy away for 1 minute. Now, that doesn't immediately tell us if this is reinforcement or punishment. We've got to look at how the behavior has changed, right? Well, it says, as a result of taking the toy away, the behavior occurs less frequently. So if the behavior has decreased, it's got to be a punishment or extinction procedure. Can't be reinforcement. Reinforcement only increases. Now, if we are removing something, right, we're removing the toy, we're taking it away, is that positive or negative? Well, of course, that's going to be a negative procedure, right? Remember, extinction, we're withholding stuff. We're not adding or taking away. So it's got to be some sort of negative procedure that's decreasing behavior. And if we have a removal of something that decreases behavior, that's got to be negative punishment. Thanks for watching. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.